Hello guys, hello friends, hello G's, it's your boy again, Falling with a Star. So guys, today we are going to look at cardiovascular system. At the end of this video, I expect you guys to know what cardiovascular system is all about, its functions, the components of the cardiovascular system, the mediastinum, also the divisions of what the mediastinum, the contents of the various divisions, and also the pericardium. In summary, the function of the cardiovascular system is just to pump blood around the body. Someone may ask why. The simple answer is the delivery of oxygen. You see, the various parts of our body needs oxygen for the production of what? Energy. So this heart firstly pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and the blood takes up what? Oxygen from the lungs and return back to what? The heart, for the heart to repump it to the whole part of the body, for the whole part of the body to get the oxygen for production of what? Energy. But it is just a part of the whole story. The blood don't only contains oxygen, it also carries carbon dioxide, which we all know as the end product of what? Cellular respiration. It also carries waste products, sometimes to the liver for metabolism, and lastly it also carries what? Hormones to other parts of the body. So now let's look at the major components of the cardiovascular system. In the cardiovascular system, you can find the heart and also the blood vessels that we all know, the arteries, veins, and capillaries. One thing we must know is that most of these components are being found in the mediastinum. And I know by now someone is asking, what is mediastinum? I don't know about mediastinum. So it would be very nice for us to actually look at what mediastinum is all about. So I drew this structure to actually talk about the mediastinum. So to start with, the mediastinum is just the space, the middle space between these two lungs. So the middle space between these two lungs actually is the what? The mediastinum. Or in short, we can say that it is the middle part of the chest. The middle part of the chest. And the mediastinum contains all the thoracic organs except the lungs or pleura. So it contains all the thoracic organs like the heart, the other components except the lungs. You understand? So now, I want us to look at something here. Let's look at the lateral view of what? The mediastinum. So this is the lateral view of the mediastinum. I drew this to actually talk about the boundaries of the mediastinum for us to understand the boundaries of the mediastinum. So this whole thing represents the mediastinum, and this is the anterior part, the inferior part, the posterior part, and the superior part. You can see that superiorly, the mediastinum is being bounded by the thoracic inlet, the thoracic inlet. Posteriorly, we can see the thoracic vertebrae, and the thoracic vertebrae bounds the what? The mediastinum posteriorly. Inferiorly, there is the diaphragm, and anteriorly you can find what? The sternum. So this is the sternum. You can see the manubrium, the body of the sternum, and what? The xiphoid. So anteriorly, the mediastinum is being bounded by what? The sternum. Laterally, the mediastinum is being bounded by what? The mediastinum pleura, or the lungs. The mediastinum pleura is the same as what? The lungs. The mediastinum that we are talking about is being divided into two major parts, the superior mediastinum and also the inferior mediastinum. So this whole place here is what? The inferior mediastinum, and the upper portion is the what? The superior mediastinum. These two divisions, or the mediastinum, was being divided into these two parts by this imaginary line here. You can see that there is an imaginary line here, and this imaginary line actually extends backwards from what? The sternal angle to the lower part of what? Thoracic vertebra 4. So from the sternal angle to the lower part of what? The thoracic vertebra 4. So this is the imaginary line, and this imaginary line divides what? The mediastinum into what? The superior mediastinum and also the inferior mediastinum. Looking at the inferior mediastinum, you can see that it is further being divided into three parts: here, here, and here, 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 and here. And it is being done by the pericardium. So these structures are what I'm saying is called pericardium. So this pericardium actually divides the inferior mediastinum into three parts. The anterior, in front of the pericardium, you have the anterior mediastinum. Behind this pericardium, you have the posterior mediastinum. You understand? Now let's look at the boundaries of the various divisions. The boundaries of the various divisions. So let's look at the superior mediastinum, or let me use this structure to explain. You can see that the superior mediastinum, superiorly, it is being bounded by the thoracic inlet. This is the thoracic inlet. Inferiorly, by the imaginary line that I talked about. Posteriorly, you can see that it is being bounded by the upper four thoracic vertebrae. Thoracic vertebra 1, 2, 3, 4. The upper four thoracic vertebrae. And anteriorly, it is being bounded by the manubrium of the sternum. The manubrium of the sternum. Looking at the anterior mediastinum. Now let's look at the anterior mediastinum and look at its boundaries. Looking at the anterior mediastinum, you can see that this structure here, we all know that this is the pericardium. So you can see that this pericardium is bounding the anterior mediastinum posteriorly. So posteriorly, the anterior mediastinum is being bounded by the pericardium. And anteriorly, this is the body of the sternum. So anteriorly, the body of the sternum bounds the anterior mediastinum. And inferiorly, there is the diaphragm. There is the diaphragm. Looking at the posterior mediastinum too, this is very interesting. You can see that anteriorly, it is being bounded by the pericardium. The pericardium. And posteriorly, you can see thoracic vertebra 5 to thoracic vertebra 12. So posteriorly, it is being bounded by the lower 8 thoracic vertebrae. Lower 8 thoracic vertebrae. And inferiorly, it is being bounded by the diaphragm. But the middle mediastinum is being bounded wholly by the pericardium. Later, we'll look at the pericardium into detail. You understand? It is bounded by this pericardium. Now let's look at the contents of these divisions. When I say the contents of the divisions, I'm talking about the things that you can find in those various divisions. Things that you can find in the superior mediastinum, things that you can find in the anterior mediastinum, posterior, and also the middle mediastinum. So now let's look at the superior mediastinum and its contents. You can see that the whole of this structure here is the superior mediastinum. The whole of this place is the superior mediastinum. And in the superior mediastinum, you can see the trachea, the lower part of the trachea. So this is the trachea. This is the esophagus. You can see the lower part of the esophagus also in the in the superior mediastinum. This is the main artery. This is the main artery. You can also find the main artery in the in the superior mediastinum. And this is a branch of the main artery. And this branch to the left side of the body. And this branch is called the left common carotid artery. So the left carotid artery is also being found in the superior mediastinum. We have these branches here, and these branches, we call them the branchocephalic artery. The branchocephalic artery. We also have the aortic arch in the superior mediastinum. We also have veins in the superior mediastinum. For example, the upper half of the superior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava. So the upper half, you can see that the upper half of the superior vena cava is being found in the superior mediastinum. You can also find the left and right branchocephalic vein, but you cannot see it here. So I drew it here, the left and right branchocephalic vein. It is not only veins and arteries that you can find in the superior mediastinum. You can also find muscles. Muscles like the stenohyoid muscle, the stenothyroid muscle, the longus colli muscles. You can find all these muscles in the superior mediastinum. You can also find nerves like the phrenic nerve. When we say phrenic, it is related to diaphragm. You understand? We have the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is actually the 10th cranial nerve. All these nerves are being found in the superior mediastinum. Now let's look at the anterior mediastinum. The anterior mediastinum is a very narrow space which contains 5 main components. So for the anterior mediastinum, it contains 5 main components. And as I said earlier, this whole part is the what? The anterior mediastinum. This is the pericardium. And you can see that the pericardium is being attached to the sternum by this structure. This structure is called the sternopericardial ligament. And this sternopericardial ligament is being found in the anterior mediastinum. This structure here is called the internal thoracic artery. The internal thoracic artery can also be found in the what? The anterior mediastinum. You can also find lymph nodes and lymphatics. The fourth one is that you can find the lowest part of the thymus gland, or the thymus gland. You understand? The lowest part of the thymus gland can also be found in the what? In the anterior mediastinum. And one thing that I have to talk about is the areolar tissues. The anterior mediastinum contains mostly of what? The areolar what? Tissues. Now let's look at the middle mediastinum. The middle mediastinum. The middle mediastinum, which is actually the broadest part, mainly contains the pericardium and its components. You understand? So the middle mediastinum contains the pericardium and its component. Some of its components is the heart, the ascending aorta. We will look at all these: the ascending aorta and the right and left what? Pulmonary arteries and veins. So let me repeat myself. Some of the components of the middle mediastinum are the heart, you understand, the ascending aorta, and the right and left pulmonary arteries and veins. Now let's look at the pericardium into detail. The pericardium into detail. Normally, this is how we see the heart, but in reality, the heart is being covered in a connective tissue. The heart, this is the heart, and it's being covered in a what? A connective tissue. And the main connective tissue that we are going to talk about is the pericardium. So pericardium is a connective tissue. One thing you must know about the pericardium is that this pericardium is divided into 2 main layers. The pericardium, this whole thing is the what? The pericardium. And it is being divided into 2 main layers. The layer closer to the heart, you see, this is the layer closer to the heart. This layer is called the serous pericardium. This layer is called the serous pericardium. Let me label it. The serous pericardium. You understand? The serous pericardium. And the layer after the serous pericardium is the fibrous pericardium. So this is the fibrous pericardium. Let me label it. Fibrous pericardium. One thing you must know is that this serous pericardium is further being divided into 2. So the serous pericardium is further being divided into 2. We have the visceral layer, and the visceral layer is the inside layer. You see that this is the serous pericardium. This layer is what? The visceral layer, very close to the heart. And we have this layer called the parietal layer. So into 2 layers. The serous pericardium is being divided into 2 layers. We have the visceral layer and what? The parietal what? Layer. You understand? Now, as I said, okay, let me say this. The serous pericardium is actually responsible for producing a lubricating fluid called the pericardial fluid. You understand? So this serous pericardium actually produces a certain lubricant fluid called the pericardium fluid. And this pericardium fluid actually helps the heart to move with little friction. It helps the heart to move with what? Little friction. The next layer after the serous pericardium is the what? The fibrous pericardium, which is a very tough connective tissue. It's a very tough connective tissue. Let's look at the fibrous pericardium into detail. This is the fibrous pericardium. This is the heart. You can see that it is being covered by what? The fibrous pericardium. This fibrous pericardium continues superiorly with the great vessels. You see, these are the great vessels. You can see that superiorly it continues with these great vessels, and inferiorly the fibrous connective tissue is being attached to the diaphragm by the central tendon. It's being attached to the diaphragm by the central tendon. So this is the central tendon, and this is the diaphragm. So inferiorly, it is being attached to this by the central tendon. And these structures here are called the sternopericardial ligament. And as I said, the sternopericardial ligament connects the pericardium to the sternum, as we saw here. So it connects the pericardium to the sternum. The pericardium to the sternum. Thank you. So this is all about the first part of cardiovascular system. Please subscribe to my channel.